Let's take a look at some data and try to figure out why the world still accepts dollars as the world's reserve currency. When analyzing a political system, the main thing to look for is what the players have to gain from a change and what they have to lose. So let's start there with an initial look at the United States. The U.S. Central Bank has $486 billion of total reserves. The reported amount is less, but that's because the immense store of gold bullion is on the books at $42 per ounce instead of the market value of $1,375 per ounce. I've adjusted it upward to reflect its market value. The Fed reports to hold 8,134 metric tons of gold. Now I know this is a hotly debated number, but for now let's assume that it's there and see where the analysis takes us. The gold held is larger than any other nation on Earth by more than a factor of 2. Surprisingly, the gold represents 74% of the Fed's total reserves. This is a very large number. When Ron Paul asked Bernanke why the Fed holds so much gold, his answer was simply, tradition. Maybe there's another reason. What would happen if currencies around the world failed? Well, if gold were reintroduced into the system, the U.S. would still be on top monetarily. That's a pretty good position to be in, and I'd argue that the real reason why the Fed holds so much gold. It's the trump card. It's much too valuable to part with, at least in its entirety. So why doesn't the Fed just arrange to have gold introduced back into the system? Well, for one, it's not to the U.S.'s advantage to do so. The U.S. is in a very good position also being the issuer of the world's reserve currency. This allows the U.S. to run deficits funded by the rest of the world for as long as the rest of the world accepts dollars. And they can do this without the tremendous gold drain experienced in the late 1960s. If all else fails, the U.S. also has the world's biggest and most advanced military. So you could say that the U.S. is in a very powerful position. If the currency system continues, then the U.S. will be in a dominant position. If the currency system fails, then the U.S. will still be in a dominant position because of the gold. Now take a look at Saudi Arabia. They have some fairly substantial total official reserves, but only 2% of it is gold. I suspect the reason is that much of the gold is not held in the name of the people, but it is probably in the private stores of the aristocracy. So if the currency system failed, 98% of the people's monetary wealth would be wiped out. Sure, the aristocracy would be fine, but that doesn't do much for the country itself. The Kingdom of Saud would still be okay because of its tremendous oil wealth. However, the leaders are aware that oil is a finite resource, and so their goal is to convert some of it to gold wealth. They are doing that very slowly. It might happen faster if the royals put all of the gold into the treasury, but still, their interest is to keep the gold flowing. So as long as they have a market for their oil and the gold keeps flowing, they have an interest in keeping the dollar system going. Japan and China are in similar position to Saudi Arabia. They are very gold poor, but they have a resource that is almost as valuable as oil. They have low-cost labor and manufacturing capability. As a result of trade imbalances, they also have a very large amount of total reserves. Most of the reserves, 97 to 99% of them, are just IOUs that will go up in a puff of smoke if the currency system fails, leaving them with only their manufacturing capabilities. So their goal is to use the currency to secure natural resources, while trying to convert some of it to real monetary wealth in the form of gold. After all, if they only have 1/10 of the gold the U.S. has when the dollar fails, then they will be in a very disadvantaged position upon a currency failure. One might say they are in a disadvantaged position now, they just haven't had to book the losses. So Japan and China will have an interest in keeping things going so long as they can continue to accumulate real monetary wealth. China's imports of gold are very large, and so it is obvious they are trying to do this as quickly as possible. The 1,054-ton gold number is quite a few years old, and it is rumored that when the Chinese next announce their gold holdings, they will be at least a couple of thousand tons higher. What's left of the countries of Europe? Germany, Italy, and France are not the industrial powerhouses that China and Japan are. Neither are they the military powerhouses or major oil producers. What they do have going for them are large, very large stores of gold for the size of their economies. Yes, much of the gold is held outside of their countries, but they still have a legitimate claim to the gold on their books. Notice that their percentage of gold as a percentage of the reserves are almost as high as the United States. That is, with the exception of Switzerland, who declined to join the euro. This means that if the dollar system collapses, the gold will make them whole monetarily. This is no accident. It was set up this way by the architects of the euro. The Eurozone countries are simply playing defense. They see the writing on the wall and want to make sure that they make it out of this mess in one piece. And if all goes well for them, they are hoping that the euro will be adopted as the new world reserve currency, or at least that the euro will be a strong force in world trade. Russia was once a superpower just like the United States, but between the spending war with the US and weak oil prices of the late 80s and 90s, they collapsed. They are recovering fairly quickly. They are a major oil producer and still have a powerful military. Monetary reserves are building up quickly. Putin is doing a very nice job of brokering deals with other countries and converting a fair share of their monetary reserves into gold. Still, Russia has a long way to go to insulate themselves from a dollar currency collapse. So even though one might think that Russia would be trying to destabilize the dollar, unless they are underreporting their gold reserves, it would benefit them to bide their time a little more until they can build up their gold reserves. The only thing really holding the dollar system together is political will. The US can't do it alone. They need the support from the rest of the world. If we take this data at face value, we can conclude that it is not in the best interests of the rest of the world to yank support away from the dollar. Yet. I believe that the rest of the nations know that when the dollar fails, gold will be a major factor in the new world monetary system. That's the real reason why the US hasn't sold its gold. It's the reason why the euro was established with gold being a key reserve asset. It's the reason why China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are accumulating. The dominant monetary power in the New World Order will be the one that controls the most gold. For now, it appears that political will is on the side of keeping things going the way that they are. China appears to be losing interest, however, as evidenced by their not purchasing any more U.S. treasuries. We'll soon hear from them their report of official gold holdings, and the number will probably bring their total to at least half of the U.S.'s total. Eventually, when all of the players conclude that they will benefit from the dollar collapse, or at least not lose, they will remove support from the dollar system. The Eurozone countries are probably already there. The fate of the U.S. currency rests in the hands of Russia, Japan, China, and Saudi Arabia.